What you're about to see is a video the White House did not want you to watch. On April 1st, 2026, and no, this is not an April Fool's joke, the official White House YouTube channel uploaded a live feed of Donald Trump's Easter lunch. Then, within hours, they quietly made it private, gone, deleted, like it never happened. But here's the thing about the internet, it never forgets. The footage continued circulating. News organizations like Forbes, PBS, and CNN confirmed it was real. And now, today, we are breaking down every single moment, waiting because what Trump said at that Easter lunch just hours before his big national primetime address on the Iran war is something every American deserves to see. Plus, we're going to walk through what actually happened in that primetime speech, what the latest polls are saying, and why Trump's approval rating just hit the lowest point of his entire second term. This is a lot to cover, so let's get into it. Let's start with the moment that set the tone for the entire day. Trump was hosting an Easter lunch at the White House, a private event closed to the press. But the White House itself live-streamed it. And in that stream, before his scheduled 9 p.m. national address on the Iran war, Trump told the room exactly what the speech was going to be about. His words, and I want you to really hear this, were, "Tonight, I'm making a little speech at 9 twar, and basically I'm going to tell everybody how great I am." That's the President of the United States in the middle of an active war that has killed 13 American service members, with gas prices above $4 a gallon, and an economy that most Americans say is getting worse. And that's what he said about his own speech. No mention of the families who lost loved ones, no mention of the economic pain, just, "I'm going to tell everybody how great I am." Now, here's where it gets even more extraordinary. Within that same lunch, Trump made several statements that we need to go through one by one. First, he attacked NATO. Trump called NATO a paper tiger. He said, and again, these are his words from the now deleted video, that when the U.S. needed NATO, they weren't there. He described NATO allies as very bad and floated the idea that the U.S. might withdraw from the alliance entirely. This isn't a small thing. NATO has been the cornerstone of Western security since 1949. A U.S. exit would require congressional approval under a law passed in 2024, and it would be, in the words of Senator Mark Warner, reckless and a direct gift to America's adversaries. Second, he commented on J.D. Vance's weight. Standing in the White House with cabinet members and faith leaders around him, Trump looked at his own vice president and said, in front of everyone, that J.D. Vance used to be a heavy-set gentleman and is now a perfect-looking specimen. I'll let you sit with that for a moment. Third, he started talking about a faith advisor comparing him to Jesus. A faith advisor at the lunch told Trump on camera that he had paid a price like no one else, that he was betrayed and arrested and falsely accused, and that it was, quote, a familiar pattern that our Lord and Savior showed us. They compared the President of the United States to Jesus Christ in the White House, on camera, and Trump just took it in. Fourth, he called his own budget director Darth Vader. Russ Vought, the man who architected Project 2025, who runs the Office of Management and Budget, Trump looked around the room and said, "Where's Darth Vader? Russ Vought, where is he? Hi, Darth Vader." This is the person managing the federal budget, being called Darth Vader by the president at a faith lunch on Easter. And fifth, in what might be the most surreal moment of all, Trump started talking about Palm Sunday, Jesus entering Jerusalem, and then connected it to himself. "They call me king now. Do you believe it? I'm such a king. I can't get a ballroom approved." He compared himself to a king and then complained about a ballroom permit. Ladies and gentlemen, this is why the White House deleted that video. Now let's move to the main event. Trump's primetime national address on the Iran war, delivered from the Cross Hall of the White House. The speech lasted just under 20 minutes, and here's the honest assessment from analysts across the political spectrum. It told Americans very little that they didn't already know. Trump said that the U.S. military's core strategic objectives are nearing completion. He said the war would be over, eventually. He talked about the damage done to Iran's Navy and Air Force. He compared the duration of the conflict to World War I and World War II to put it in perspective. But here's what he did not say. He didn't provide a clear exit strategy. He didn't explain when the war would actually end. He didn't address the Strait of Hormuz in a way that gave markets any comfort. And he didn't mention the 13 American service members who have died. What he did say was this: "We are going to hit them extremely hard over the next 2 to 3 weeks. We're going to bring them back to the Stone Ages where they belong." The markets responded immediately. Stock futures dropped. Oil prices surged. Brent crude spiked above $105 per barrel after the speech. As the Hill's analysts put it, the speech offered few details of an exit strategy and did little to calm oil markets. Even conservative commentator Ann Coulter, one of Trump's own ideological allies, posted a screenshot of rising oil futures after the speech with a sarcastic note about Trump's magnificent speech. When you've lost Ann Coulter on a war speech, that tells you something. Let's talk about the NATO story, because this is genuinely one of the most significant geopolitical developments in decades. Earlier on the same day as the Easter lunch and the prime time address, Trump gave an interview to Britain's Telegraph newspaper, and he said about leaving NATO, "Oh yes, I would say it's beyond reconsideration. I always knew they were a paper tiger." He later told Reuters, "Oh, absolutely, without question. Wouldn't you do that if you were me? They haven't been friends when we needed them. It's a one-way street." Now here's the context. Trump became furious after NATO allies, including France, Germany, the UK, and others, declined to join the U.S.-Israeli military action against Iran. They also refused to send warships to help police the Strait of Hormuz. Trump called this a betrayal. He called it a test that NATO failed. NATO leaders pushed back hard. Poland's defense minister called the threat reckless and said it plays directly into the hands of our adversaries. The UK's Prime Minister Keir Starmer said NATO was the single most effective military alliance the world has ever seen. And Russia's top envoy to the United States posted publicly, "Goodbye, NATO," cheering on Trump's attacks on the alliance. Here is the legal reality. A 2024 law, passed with bipartisan support, requires congressional approval for any U.S. withdrawal from NATO. Senators like Mitch McConnell and Chris Coons have already made clear they will block any attempt to bypass Congress on this. Marco Rubio himself, back when he was a senator, co-authored legislation making this exact point. But whether or not Trump can legally pull the U.S. from NATO, the damage from even threatening to do so is already being done. Russia is emboldened. European allies are scrambling to figure out what an America without NATO commitments looks like. And markets are increasingly nervous about a world where the Western alliance is fracturing. Let's talk about where Trump actually stands with the American people right now, because the numbers are genuinely historic, and not in a good way for the president. Here are the facts from the latest polling. A brand new CNN poll conducted March 26, 30, with over 1,200 respondents, found that Trump's approval rating on handling the economy has dropped to 31%, a career low. That is his worst number ever on the economy. His approval on inflation, 27%, down from 44% just 1 year ago. Nearly half the country has abandoned him specifically on inflation in 12 months. His overall job approval sits at 35%, just 1 point off his all-time low. According to the Silver Bulletin polling average, Trump's net approval is now 16.7, a record low for his second term, and worse than Joe Biden was at the same point in his presidency. The NBC News poll found that 62% of voters disapprove of Trump's handling of inflation and the cost of living, and a Reuters Ipsos survey found that 55% of American households say their finances have been at least somewhat impacted by higher gasoline prices due to the Iran war. Gas prices crossed $4 per gallon for the first time since 2022. That's the direct economic consequence most Americans are feeling every single week at the pump. And among his own base, the erosion is real. According to YouGov Economist polling, Trump is down 6 points among his own 2024 voters, down 5 points among Republicans, and down 5 points among self-described MAGA supporters, all since the start of the Iran war. Among independents, the voters who actually decide elections, Trump's approval has dropped to just 22%. CNN's chief data analyst Harry Enton put it bluntly, "This is no April Fool's joke. This is a disaster. All these numbers are a disaster for President Trump." He compared Trump's inflation disapproval numbers to Joe Biden and Jimmy Carter, two presidents whose terms were defined by economic pain. When you have Biden and Carter on the board and you're matching them, Enton said. You know it's bad. Here's something the White House does not want you to focus on. Trump, during his Easter lunch and on social media that same morning, claimed that Iran's new regime president had asked for a ceasefire. He said discussions were ongoing. He said Iran was ready to deal. Iran's government responded immediately and directly. False, baseless, fabricated. Iran's foreign ministry spokesman Esmail Baghaei called Trump's ceasefire claim false and baseless. Iran's new Ayatollah, Mojtaba Khamenei, publicly declared that Iran's consistent policy is to continue supporting resistance against the Zionist U.S. enemy. Multiple U.S. intelligence agencies, according to reporting from the New York Times, have assessed in recent days that the Iranian government is not currently willing to engage in any serious negotiations and believes it is in a strong position. Iran does not trust the United States or Donald Trump, U.S. officials told the Times, and yet Trump told the American people that discussions are ongoing. The Strait of Hormuz, which handles roughly 20% of the world's oil supply, remains effectively closed by Iran. Trump, during his speech, tried to downplay America's reliance on it, but oil markets weren't buying it. Prices surged immediately after his address. An Iranian official warned the U.S. would not regain access to the strait, saying it would reopen, but not for you. Here's the bottom line, and I want to be fair and honest with you about this. The U.S. military has genuinely damaged Iran's military capabilities. Netanyahu and Trump are both claiming significant battlefield success. The Iranian Navy and Air Force have been degraded. Nuclear facilities have been struck. Those are real developments. But the central question, the one that even members of Trump's own party are now asking, is what is the actual end game? As the Hill's analysis put it after the speech, the central political difficulty for Trump has been the seeming inability to articulate a clear case for why the war was necessary right now. Even former Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, one of Trump's most loyal congressional supporters, said after the speech, "All I heard from his speech tonight was war, war, war. Nothing to lower the cost of living for Americans." The midterms are coming. Democrats are watching these numbers closely. And Americans regardless of party, you are feeling it every time they fill up their tank. The war began on February 28, 2026. As of today, April 2nd, 2026, 13 American service members have been killed. Iran says more than 1,700 of its people have been killed. Over 2,300 people in Lebanon have died in Israeli strikes. More than 1 million in Lebanon have been displaced. These are real human costs. And right now, the American public is increasingly asking, was it worth it? And more importantly, when does it end? Look, we covered a lot today. From the deleted Easter lunch video, to Trump's primetime address, to the NATO crisis, to record low approval ratings, to what Iran is actually saying versus what the White House is claiming. The full source links for every poll, every article, and every claim in this video are in the description below. I encourage you, always, to read the original sources and make up your own mind. If you found this video informative, hit that like button. It genuinely helps this channel reach more people. Subscribe so you don't miss our next breakdown. Because in this news environment, things are moving fast, and we're going to keep covering it all. I'll see you in the next one.